We're marketed to on every level, so we can keep buying until the cows come home, literally. From our perspective, it's about asking questions about the supply chain.
A lot of the time I find they almost kind of try and dodge the question, even if you're going to directly ask them. They'll say like, oh well, the t-shirts are printed in the USA, so that means they're ethical, but the actual t-shirt was made somewhere else.
And they don't care whether in actual situations the river has been polluted or not. So I think this has to be changed.
In front of my face, like I saw it myself, how it was already really unfair how it actually works in Indonesia. We're very much low fashion, we're very much ethically and sustainably sourced products that are completely made in Indonesia.
The fast fashion industry has changed the way we shop. The convenience of shopping fresh off the runway pieces for less than a meal out means that consumers are now buying more than ever before. Australians are the second largest consumers of textiles in the world, buying on average 27 kilograms of new clothing and other textiles each year. Retail giants such as H&M and Zara are dominating the industry. Adding new lines to their stores each week, they are now almost twice as valuable as designers like Chanel. And the industry shows no signs of slowing down, with clothing consumption predicted to rise by 60% before the year 2030. But our obsession with consuming textiles on such a large scale is having a considerable impact on the environment. Jane Milburn is a sustainability consultant and founder of Textile Beat, a pioneer in the slow fashion movement.
Everything we wear has a footprint, and I guess that's why I advocate so much for wearing second-hand clothing, which can be just as beautiful and stylish as new, because that way you're not adding production stress to the environment. 90% of the clothes that are sold in Australia are made overseas, and so we're outsourcing the environmental responsibilities that go with that, because sometimes the reason things aren't done here is because the standards are too high. It's easier and cheaper to ship it offshore, and it's a bit out of sight.
Hola guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to Steal the Spotlight.
Katie Orlowski represents a new business model for fashion brands. As an influencer, Katie receives clothes from fashion companies to feature on her YouTube and Instagram for her audiences to see.
At the moment, I'm working with Princess Polly, and I'd be getting like at least 12 items from them in one go. For what I personally purchase, I usually try and mostly thrift. But again, depending on videos, if I need something specific, I might be looking anywhere between like 1 item to 10 items.
Unlike other influencers, Katie tries to limit what she buys from fast fashion retailers and sources most of her pieces secondhand.
I actually got into it through YouTube, and originally it wasn't for any sort of like ethical purposes. It was just that you can find really cool stuff that nobody else has. So I think that that's kind of what got me into it. And then when I saw more about the kind of slow fashion movement and everything, it made me realize how much I was spending on fast fashion, and kind of tried to find those items at the thrift shop before I would commit to buying something brand new.
So why are fashion enthusiasts like Jane and Katie all around the world now turning to a slower alternative? To find out the answer, I travelled to Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, to explore the damages the industry is inflicting on countries that manufacture the goods we so often buy without second thought. Indonesia is home to over 5,500 rivers, ranking it amongst the top 10 textile producers in the world. In 2014, the World Bank recorded over $12 billion worth of exports from Indonesia, providing 3 million people with jobs in the textile and garment industry. But this booming market has come at a great cost. Water pollution due to industrial waste is Indonesia's second largest environmental problem after deforestation, with only 2% of the nation's river water of sound quality. Roek Majadi Soemantojo is a professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering at the University of Indonesia. Specialising in industrial waste management, Soemantojo believes it would be difficult for factories to dispose of their waste anywhere but waterways.
Jakarta waters are worsening due to the rise of the industry and residents,
While the management is not yet steady, it is developing. Many industrial factories dump their waste in Chitaram River, including the textile industry. There are 3 steps involved in the textile industry: spinning, weaving, and processing. This is where the dyeing process comes in. The most polluting process is the dyeing process. Factories could minimize their waste through managing the process, such as choosing substances that are not too dangerous for the environment. It can't be avoided, but at least the substances they choose will be safe.
Many textile factories across Indonesia are responsible for dumping their waste into rivers and polluting the waterways with toxic dyes and chemicals. A report released by the Changing Markets Foundation last year linked European retail giants such as H&M, Zara and Marks & Spencer's to severe environmental damage caused by untreated contaminated waste in countries like Indonesia. Across the city, waterways that are stained by shades of red and blue are not an uncommon sight, with thick layers of foam often forming above the water.
Figures released by the World Bank indicate that 20% of global water pollution is a result of the textile industry. The thick layer of foam that forms across rivers in Jakarta is a result of both domestic and industrial waste. In April this month alone, the Indonesian government investigated several cases where factories had dumped their waste across the riverbank at Kali Bekasi.
While the Indonesian government is quick to investigate cases of unauthorised waste disposal from industrial factories, there is still a lot to be done to ensure the standards of industrial waste disposal is improved. Andri Gunawan Wibisana is an expert in environmental law and a lecturer at the University of Indonesia. Like many others in Jakarta, Wibisana has become frustrated with the lack of concrete laws that restrict what factories can dispose of into waterways.
We have a particular law on regulations on prevention of water pollutions, and this, according to this particular regulations, someone who wants to release wastewater into a body of water, they need to have the so-called discharge permit. The problem here in Indonesia is that instead of relying on the connections between the quality of the river and also the standard, the government relies heavily on the standard of effluent. Unfortunately, in many parts of Indonesia, this standard has nothing to do with the quality of the river. So we have really very strange situations. Company get permits, they follow the effluent standards, but the river is still polluted, heavily polluted.
Despite the difficulties the textile industry has faced with ethical production methods, it is possible for brands to create products that are both sustainable and safe for the environment. Slow fashion is a movement that is quickly spreading across countries like Australia and now Indonesia. Those who believe in slow fashion seek to care for the clothes they have, upcycling and reinventing garments they own in order to extend their lifespan. If new clothes have to be bought, they are generally thrifted or purchased from an ethical source. Stephanie Chandra is the founder and creative director of Rupa House, an eco-luxury brand based in Western Australia. Stephanie and her team work closely with local artisans in rural Indonesia and use only natural materials to create sustainable clothing and home decor.
One of the most important things that we kind of hold on in Rupa House, that everything is created 100% from Indonesia. The main reason why I wanted to work with the artisans is to go against the factories, and everything else was already built here in Indonesia. For instance, the batik kimonos that we have from Rupa House, they're all sourced from Central Java.
It wasn't until after starting Rupa House that Stephanie truly came face to face with the hidden impacts of the fast fashion industry.
I was surveying one of the batik artisans, and then the driver that took us around showed us like the one main river that they have there. And then, so he made a joke and he said, if you want to see the new season's color, just look at the river, it's gonna come up soon. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he was like, yeah, well, it changes color, like yellow to red to green to black. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, all the chemical dyes go in there.
Stephanie's method to create sustainable products using a traditional Indonesian approach is not a new concept. Aprina Muwanti is a researcher and exhibition curator at Museum Makan. In 2017, Muwanti curated an exhibition called the Slow Fashion Lab in an attempt to inspire visitors to take concrete action towards a more sustainable way of dealing with clothes and textiles. Muwanti believes reviving Indonesia's traditional approach to formulating textiles may be the answer to saving waterways and the environment.
In our tradition, slow fashion is not something new. We already have that kind of tradition. The high standard production of dyeing and making the fabric, it's happened since hundreds of years ago. But because of the industrial and capitalism, everything changed. In Indonesia, we have cultural heritage that we can use and maximize to push slow fashion to be concrete and realistic in micro business. So we are not looking into big scale, we're looking into some cluster of production that can make the slow fashion itself sustainable.
As the message of the slow fashion movement quickly spreads across the globe, more and more consumers and retailers alike are beginning to think about the positive impacts of ethical production.
It's actually deciding that we want to be more involved with our wardrobe.
Just can reduce the volume and just adjust based on research which product that they want to prioritize instead of just producing cheap stuff and putting it to the market.
I'm not the only one in Indonesia right now who's doing what Rupa House is doing. It's kind of like a movement. It's small scale right now what we're doing, but if it's actually giving impacts to people, then why not?
I think everyone can do it because I'm fully self-taught and I think if I can do it, anyone can.
To slow down the industry and protect the environment, consumers are encouraged to recycle or repurpose old items and choose quality over quantity when purchasing from retailers. Across the Indo-Pacific, Indonesians clearly recognise the terrible problems created by the textile industry, but they are just as determined to clean up their environment by embracing the wisdom of the past. Chloe Belchamber, UQ in Jakarta.